Okay. Thank you, William. All right. And I know that, there are some HR professionals here joining us today as well. And for HR professionals, this Digital Delivery Management Accreditation Scheme provides us all with a structured framework for which we can recognize the skill sets of job seekers and also assist your company to identify who are the competent people and that can fulfill that various job roles within the digital delivery management framework. And as Junkit explained, it also helps firms at a project level to ensure that your team is staffed with qualified professionals, the intended outcomes. And so, we've got advantages to everyone at the individual level, the employee level, and at the industry-wide level as well. So just to recap, the skills framework has 8 career pathways. You can see that the blue one is for architecture track. The orange one is for engineering, consultancy, and design. Then there is quantity surveying, construction management, project management, facilities management. And the one that we are focusing today is on digital delivery management. And within the digital delivery management itself, you can see 4 job roles. There is the assistant specialist right at the very bottom, and that's tier 4. As you move up, it's called tier 3 specialist, or what we know in the industry commonly today as BIM coordinators. So tier 4 is like BIM modelers, tier 3 is like specialists or BIM coordinators. Tier 2 level is what we commonly know in the industry as BIM managers or the lead for digital delivery within this skills framework. And at tier 1 level, it's like really a C-suite level of professional, and we call that the Chief Digital Officer. Now, within each of these boxes that you see within the skills framework on the screen right now, it corresponds to a skills map that tells you what are the things that this person needs to do on an everyday basis to be considered as, within that role, and what are the competencies that he or she needs to have. So let me just pull up an example of a skills map for you. Now you can see on my screen that there is a skills map for the specialist, tier 3, or what we know commonly as the BIM coordinator. So you can see that there is a job role description that talks about what the specialist is doing on an everyday basis. So the specialist will be involved in things like project delivery, digital solutions development, adoption and competency building, interprets business requirements and translate them into digital solutions. He or she must be familiar with digital solutions and business requirements to add value to the business. So if you are hiring a BIM coordinator, or what we know as a specialist, you can also just cut and paste this, into your JD to ensure that you can articulate that more easily as well, right? That's what it's there for. It's public information in the public domain. You can find them on the Skills Future website at any time. So you can download this, copy and paste this as part of your JD as well when you're hiring people. So now let's move on to what a specialist is supposed to do on an everyday basis. So there is a list of key tasks, that is classified by critical work functions. So generally, the specialist has 3 critical work functions. Number 1, it is to drive project delivery and collaboration. Number 2, manage technological adoption. And number 3, build digital competency. And within each of the critical work functions, you can see a list of key tasks. So there are 19 key tasks in total for the specialist. You can see that one of them involves performing BIM model checks and audits to detect discrepancies, reduce potential construction issues, and minimize resolution latency. So that's just one of the examples. And there's 19 key tasks. So basically what this individual does on a day-to-day basis to be considered to be fulfilling this job role. And the skills map also covers things that the individual needs to know or have experience of in order to deliver this job properly. So you can see that there is a list of 3D modeling level 3, applications integration level 3, application support and enhancement level 2. So what does all these mean, right? It's just like headers and then some level thing to it. So within each technical skill and competency that you see over here, there is a reference document that tells you exactly what they mean, right? So they are not just headers. There is actually a reference document attached to them. So let's take the example of the Building Information Modeling Application Level 3. What does that mean, right? So if you look at this document called the reference document, you can see this is the Technical Skills and Competencies reference document. Let me zoom in a little bit so that you can see it better. It explains what that TSC means. Yes, I'm still showing the PDF. I'm showing a different PDF now. So I'm showing the TSC reference PDF, Ron Malit. So if you can't see it, tell me, okay, like William did just now. All right, so in this TSC document for Building Information Modeling Application that you can see over here, there are level 3, level 4, and level 5. And within level 3, this is the list of things that they need to know and the abilities that they need to have. So you can see that, there's no such thing as BIM application level 2 at the moment. Maybe that's something that can be developed later on, but at the moment within the system, there isn't anything like that. Within the system, what we have is levels 3, 4, and 5, each corresponding to a list of knowledge and abilities that articulates what this individual needs to know in order to be competent in that particular TSC, right? So that's just a recap of what's happening in the skills map. And then we have a list of generic skills and competencies. So they are more like soft skills, covering things like digital literacy, critical thinking, computational thinking. And all of these are actually also tied to the reference, a particular reference document, right? So that's how you read the skills map, right? So that's for specialists for digital delivery. And you can see in this skills map that there are 49 job roles. That means that there are 49 skills maps that you can look at. And for Renee's question, regarding whether can you move from DDM into other tracks? So there are TSCs. The same TSCs appear in different places in different job roles. So if you have matched the TSCs, you can use that to move into other tracks. So that's how you use it. So we've got within the DDM track, which is the pink track, there are 4 tiers altogether, right? And that's what we are accrediting for. 4 tiers that are now open for registration. There is Tier 1, Chief Digital Officer, which is launching in the later part of the first quarter of 2022. So we are expecting that by about March, by February or March. Tier 2 and Tier 3, which is the lead and specialist, which have already been launched. So registrations are already open for you to submit your applications right now. And then there's Tier 4, assistant specialist, or what we know as the BIM modeler, which is open for registrations at the end of Q1 2022. Membership with Building Smart Singapore. So William and I represent Building Smart Singapore. Building Smart Singapore is not a requisite for accreditation. You can just come forward for accreditation. And when you are accredited for a particular job role, the accreditation lasts for 2 years. So there are a list of qualifications and experience that you have to meet in order to be accredited at certain levels. So maybe I'll start with Tier 4, the BIM modeler or assistant specialist. So if you are being accredited for that role, you need to have minimum 1 year of experience, regardless of whether you are a degree or a diploma or a NITEC graduate. You need to show that you have handled at least 1 BIM or IDD project and obtained 3 peer recommendations. At Tier 3 level, specialist, or what we know as the BIM coordinator, there is a requirement. If you are a degree holder, you are required to have at a minimum 2 years of work experience. If you have a diploma or NITEC as the highest qualification, just 1 more year of work experience, 3 years of work experience. And within that 3 years, 3 beam IDD projects. So if you don't have a qualification in the built environment, so for example, a number of us here may have a background in like, aerospace engineering, for example, or manufacturing, but fate has it that we found ourselves in a built environment. So in that case, you are not considered to have a qualification, but your experience is recognized, because as long as you have 4 years of work experience in the built environment sector in 3 BEAM or IDD projects, you are considered to have met the accreditation requirements for Tier 3 BEAM coordinator, specialist. At Tier 2, lead of the BEAM manager, what are we looking out for? So if you have a degree, we are looking at 4 years of work experience, 5 years if you have a diploma or NITEC as your highest qualification, 6 years if you don't have any relevant qualification within the built environment, but you've worked in it, for this number of years. You will need to have clocked at least 5 BEAM or IDD projects, where at least one of it must be an IDD project, and gotten 3 peer recommendations. Tier 1 is the highest tier, or the Chief Digital Officer. For that, you will need to have 9 years of work experience if you have a degree, 10 years of work experience if you're a diploma or NITEC, or 11 years of work experience if you don't have a relevant qualification in the built environment. So when you submit your application, you will be submitting your organization digitalization plan, telling us how you've implemented technology within your organization, and the assessment will be based on that, right? And you need to have at least 1 peer recommendation. So peer meaning same standing or higher standing than yourself. All right, so now you see all these red asterisks over here, right? What do they mean? So they mean that you need to have at least 2 years of local project experience. So, a number of us here may not be from, may have just started work in Singapore. So if you've just newly entered Singapore, then you need to clock at least 2 years of local project experience to qualify for the accreditation. Now, if you are at Tier 4, we have to give chance because you only just started. So just 1 year would be sufficient. And all in all, for everyone, there is a validity period of 5 years for the projects that you've handled or completed to be considered. And how do we assess that you are competent? So you can see in this table here that we have this thing called the logbook. So the logbook is applicable in Tier 4, Tier 3, and Tier 2. Right? So within the logbook, we are looking for you to have done 75% of the relevant key tasks and have met at least 3 out of 5 critical core skills. So how do we assess that? That brings us to the logbook. So you can see on my screen now, this is a logbook. Okay, so when you submit your application, this is downloadable from the Building Smart website. So what you do is that you have to download the correct logbook. Okay, so this is a Tier 3 logbook, which I'm just using for example, but there is also a Tier 2 logbook and a Tier 4 logbook. Tier 1 got no logbook because Tier 1 is an organization digitization plan. Okay, so make sure that you download the correct logbook. Why? Because each logbook is tied to the skills map that we saw just now. All right, so what happens is that you fill in your name, your contact, email, and the date of your submission. You write up the project that you've been involved in. So remember that, for Tier 3, you need to have participated in at least 3 BEAM or IDD projects. So you have to write down the name of the project that you were participating in. What is the project about? What was your role in the project? How long were you in this project for? How long does this project last? So some of us may be in projects that last 5, 6 years, right? And what was your time period of your participation in the project? What kind of BEAM model did you create? And what was the software that you used in your project? What was the scope of work your scope of work in the project? And of course, we've got some fields where, it can be like a learning reflection kind of journey. So you can write down what were the challenges that you faced and you resolved, what were the learning points. This is where your peers can write their recommendations for you. And then, you have to attach a documentation, kind of like an evidence of what you've done. So for example, as a specialist, if you have written a BEAM execution plan, this is the time for you to attach your BEAM execution plan and submit it together with your application. So then your supervisor will be the primary person that is endorsing your logbook. So your supervisor will write down your experience and observation of the candidate, which is yourself, and put down his or her name, the designation, the company, contact number, email, signature, and we will also need your HR manager to sign off on the document as well. So what does the supervisor need to sign off on? Basically, it is the key tasks that is listed in the skills map. You can see that in the skills map, we've got 19 key tasks for the tier 3. So one of them is to perform BEAM model checks and audits to detect discrepancies, reduce potential construction issues and minimize resolution latency. So then your supervisor, if you've done that, your supervisor needs to sign off right here, right? And with every key task, with each of the key tasks, this is what your supervisor will have to sign off. Okay. And we have a matrix document which says that if your supervisor has signed off on this task, perform BEAM model checks and audits, it means, on our end, it means that you have met this TSC and this list of critical core skills within the skills map. Right, and that's how we tally up if you have met the relevant key task and the critical core skills. For tier 2 and 3, the logbook itself will also be used to assess whether you have met the technical skills and competencies. Right, and then thereafter for tier 2 and 3, you will sit for a multiple choice assessment test to finalize your application. So if you pass it, you meet the accreditation requirements. If you don't, then you fail. So for tier 4, you don't have an assessment, a multiple choice assessment test. For tier 4, you have a modeling test. Right, we'll come into that later. So if you are applying at tier 1 level, which is the Chief Digital Officer, you would need to present your roadmap and your organization digitization plan, and then sit for a panel interview where we will have panelists to interview you, and where you will share about what you have done for your organization, and from there the panelists will decide if you have met the relevant key tasks, critical core skills, and technical skills and competencies as listed in the skills map for the Chief Digital Officer. All right, so there is a list of core technical skills and competencies and elective technical skills and competencies. So that applies for each of the tier. So, but mainly it is the logbook, right? If you have gotten 75% of the relevant key tasks signed off by your supervisor, then you are considered primarily to have met the accreditation requirements. So let's come to what happens for tier 1 candidates. For tier 1 candidates, you have to sit for a panel interview. So there will be 3 panel assessors that will have a scoring matrix to assess your competency based on the skills framework. The assessors of the interview panel is already formed, and the individuals there's a minimum criteria of holding a management position in a company, council, committee, and have at least 10 years of experience in the built environment sector. And so progressively, as we accredit more and more tier 1 personnels, they will be invited as part of the assessment committee as well. We've been through the logbook for tiers 2, 3, and 4. It is a document that a document that talks about, that covers what is your track record, what are the projects that you've participated in. There is a validity period of 5 years, just 2 years for tier 4 for the projects to be considered. And within the logbook, it has to be endorsed by a supervisor from your organization or your project. So from the Building Smart side, what we'll do is that we'll be running reference checks. And you would also need to submit documentation evidence, such as your BEAM execution plan. For tiers 2 and 3, you will be sitting for a multiple choice assessment test after you have submitted your logbook, and that's compulsory for everyone. There will be general questions and some discipline-specific questions. So, for example, there may be some questions related to structure or M&E. So, it really depends on what discipline you come from. The questions will generally focus on methodologies and applications, so they are not going to be like software specific. So we won't ask you, what button you have to press in Revit to produce a certain something, right? It doesn't work like that. So the questions will mainly focus on methodologies and applications. And there will also be a pre-course assessment available. So if you want additional help to pass the assessment, it is optional for you to go for this pre-course assessment. It's just 1 hour long and it's $100, where we will cover, we will talk about roughly what you should prepare for, and you can also sit for a mock-up test just to, kind of get prepared. All right. For the modeling test, you can tell us what is your chosen modeling tool. So some of us are more comfortable modeling in Revit, some of us in a Bentley product like Open Building or Open Plant. Some of us use ArchiCAD or Tekla. And then, there are different disciplines as well, like for architecture, structure, mechanical and electrical. So we will have a modeling test that's suitable for your discipline and your modeling tool as far as possible. And within the modeling test, you will need to demonstrate that you can create a BIM model for one discipline, so whether that's Archi, structure, or M&E. You can produce 2D drawings and schedules from the model. You need to show that you are able to produce an accurate IFC export with minimal data loss. You need to show that you can use some kind of IDD software to perform rendering, simulation, analysis, or clash detection, raise and respond to RFIs, and also to use a CDE to share, collaborate, and resolve issues. So when you are sitting for the modeling test, this is what you can expect to be tested on.